Hello and welcome to Archive West Texas. I'm your host, Gordon Wilkerson, joined today by our producer, Rachel Boyd. Today we're continuing our conversation with Marc McDougal. Last week we had Marc and his mother, Carolyn, that told us about the McDougal family history, how the McDougals got their start in the apartment business and the real estate business. Today we're going to focus on Marc's own service to our community, first as a member of the Lubbock City Council, later as mayor of Lubbock. We'll also discuss one of the most ambitious and often discussed redevelopment projects in the city's history, the transformation of the Overton area adjacent to Texas Tech. Marc, welcome back to Archive West Texas.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
What first motivated you to become a public servant?
So in 1996, I ran for Republican Party chair. Jane Ann Scott Mann taught me into doing that. I'd never been to a Republican Party meeting in my life. I'm not real sure I was qualified for that. But then in 1998, Randy Nagelbauer was our city councilman in our district, District 5 at the time. Randy had announced he wasn't going to run for re-election. And 2 days before filing deadline, it wasn't even on my radar screen, I got called into a meeting. And your dad was in that meeting. There was a group of them. I know Dad was in there. John Wilkerson was in there. I
Probably
believe
W.R. Collier.
W.R. Collier, Mike Liner.
Yeah.
I can't remember if Alan White was in that meeting. I think he was. There was about 6 or 7 of them. And Dad called me and said, I need you to come over to my office. I've got some guys in here who want to talk to you. So I walked in there and I don't remember having much of an option. I was told, hey, there's 2 days before filing deadline. Nobody's filed and we need you to run for city council. So I did, really enjoyed that 4 years. And I mean, that's really how that happened. But I probably because I had served as party chair, and I think they were pretty desperate at the time to find somebody to run for council.
How big was the city then?
We had not hit 200,000 yet. We hit 200,000 during my first term, my only term on city council. So that would have probably been around 99 or 2000 when we hit 200. We were just short of 200,000 at the time.
What do you think were the most pressing issues that the city was facing at that time?
Growth. You know, Lubbock has a history of having slow, steady growth of 3-4%. Back then, we didn't see the swings of, we grow for 10, 12, 15% like you see in Phoenix or Vegas, and then all of a sudden you have a 20% decrease. We just had slow, steady growth. The first issue when I got elected in 98 was the annexation of a lot of land in Southwest Lubbock. Now, remember, I'm a developer too. We were developing at the time, but I thought we were taking way too big a bite. I was also 32 years old, but before I ran for mayor, we had almost outgrown that and were annexing more land. So, that's the one that I remember on the council. There were several more as we got in, and particularly when I became mayor.
Who was city manager then?
Bob Cass.
That's right. Took over for Larry Cunningham.
Yep.
How'd you balance the business responsibilities with the public service responsibilities?
Well, it was family business, and city council back in those days wasn't just a 40-hour-a-week job. Now, maybe it was, and I was too young to know it. But, I was real fortunate. Even when I was mayor, we had really, really good employees, people working for us that stepped up. The 4 years I was mayor, I was not in the office hardly at all. And if I was in the office, in my work office, the one that paid me a paycheck, I was usually in meetings regarding something going on at City Hall. But really good people that covered for me those 8 years I was at City Hall.
What does the average citizen need to know about the city that might take for granted?
Obviously we've got great police and fire, but outside of that, our employees at the city are dedicated. They're great people. They want to make sure all of our infrastructure, our water's on, our sewer lines are running, our trash is picked up. And, that was one thing I was really impressed with from day one until the day I left until today, how dedicated our city staff and city employees are. And I'm talking about outside of City Hall.
Remember the size of the budget?
We just had this conversation with the candidates running for office now. That's the one thing about our system. You get elected in May. We have a special election. Whoever wins that race gets thrown right into a budget. The likelihood of that race being a runoff and you get in on the tail end of the budget, But even if you get elected in first Saturday in May and take office a week later, you've got back then it was $700 or $800 million. It's probably $2 billion now. I have no idea what the total, if you add everything up, there's no way to get your arms around that. I don't care what background you have coming in fresh. That is a bear to get a hold of. You got to trust some folks. And Max Ince was on the city council when I got elected. Max kind of took me under his wing and helped me out a lot the first year or two until I could kind of get my feet on the ground. And there were more. Ty Cook and David Nelson, I was there as well. When you first get there, you've got to go vote, and there's no way you understand that budget. And I would even say in year 2 and 3, you have a better understanding of it, but it's still pretty rough. You've been there with the school board. It's the same. You're drinking out of a fire hose for a while.
They're large entities, and they're only as good as the people that serve.
That's exactly right.
And we have a lot of good people in this community.
We do. We have a lot of good people in this community.
It's no small feat to keep your roads clear, to keep your sewers working, to keep your water clean.
And the one thing that we have, whether it's City Hall or school district or our hospitals, just our people in Lubbock in general have a great work ethic. And it all kind of boils down to that.
What accomplishments from your years on the council are you most proud of?
When I got elected mayor, we found out within a month or two that LP&L was broke. I think a $38 million deficit in 3 months.
How'd that happen?
There were some folks on the city council, and I was very fortunate. I didn't know Tom Martin. I didn't know Gary Bourne, and they got elected the same time I did as mayor. They came in council. Tom replaced me, and I can't remember what district Gary was in. But those guys, and then Jim Gilbert came on, and we had 4 that the 4 of us, with the exception, I think 2 votes in 4 years, all voted together. Just really fortunate to have the council that I had the 4 years that I was mayor. And there hadn't been a lot since then that can say they had the council that I had. But there were some, to answer your question, that felt like there were some folks that probably should be prosecuted over that. My focus was more on trying to keep our bonds from going junk than it was pointing a finger at the problem. We weeded that out, but we had that. We also found out that by 2009, Lubbock was going to be out of water. And that was with the usage we were using then, not counting any growth. But the one thing that I'm probably most proud of that we accomplished was passing the election in November of 2004 that created LEDA. That election had a 20-plus year history of failing, including one failed while I was on council. But I put a group together, including the Spartan Group and Michael Ward. Steve Massengale was real involved in that. I think he was still on the school board at the time and kind of headed the pack. And we passed that election with close to 70% of the vote. And, if you think of what our city does on a daily basis, we have one entity that has a return on investment, and it's LEDA in Market Lubbock. And so the jobs they've created the last 20 plus years, the tax base they've created, I'm really proud that we were able to pass that while I was mayor.
Yeah. Mark, you were talking about water crisis early in your mayoral tenure. Tell us about that and how the council solved that.
Well, we kind of found out by accident. We were told by one of the assistant city managers that we were really good on water for a long time. And I'm not real sure why, but I didn't have a good feeling about the meeting that we were in. So started digging into that myself. And it didn't take very long, like a couple of days, to figure out that our Bailey County system, which is the well fields that were created, I think, in 1968, may have even been before that. That may have been Cremwa. But our Cremwa line was at capacity. It's a gravity flow line. It's not one that you can pressure. So that was at capacity. Lake Meredith had dropped to historic lows, like dangerously low. Our Bailey County lines had leaks in them. The wells it just wasn't a good system. And that was our water. That was it.
We didn't have Roberts County at that point.
No, we didn't have Roberts County at that point. Lake Allen Henry was full, but no pipelines to it. So got really involved. We created a water commission with Bo Brown and Mike Liner. I believe they co-chaired that. Immediately went to Austin. I was talking to Bob Duncan, and I can't remember if Bob was senator then. He may have been. Well, he was because he followed Montford. So I was talking with him, and he called me I believe it was late on a Sunday, and said, you need to be in my office in Austin at 9:00 in the morning. So I got on Southwest flight at 6, and Bo Brown was on it. And Bo said, hey, you just want to ride with me to the Capitol? I said, how'd you know where I'm going? He said, I'm in the same meeting you're in. Well, I didn't know Bo. And Bo was Region O water chair. We got in there, and Duncan looked at me and said, I mean, it wasn't a very quick meeting. We could have had it on the phone. He said, whatever you need on water, Bo Brown needs to be involved. So we created the Water Commission, made Bo a co-chair with Mike Liner, and started looking at what our options were. Called a meeting of Crimois. I wasn't even on the Crimois board. We were just a member city. But Trent Sizemore was up in Amarillo. He was mayor. We had become pretty good friends, still are today. The mayor in Plainview, we would meet in Plainview, but we called an emergency meeting of Crimois.
Crimois is Canadian River Municipal Water Authority. No,
yes, yeah. And that's when we started talking to the folks in Roberts County about buying that water. And we started, Boone Pickens we thought he owned the water. He didn't. He had options to buy. So we started going in through Crimois and making offers to individuals. And then that would force Boone to close. And at the prices we were offering, he wasn't willing to buy. And so we were able to start kind of breaking that up. And then a couple of years after I left is when Boone finally sold the rest of his rights. And that's a big deal. Now, we still have a line today that is just like it was when I was there. You can't put any more water down it, but we have plenty of water. We brought Lake Allen Henry on board. They're not using the well fields in Bailey County as much as they used to, but it's still there. And now you're hearing about Lake 7. That'll be reality in about 6 years, I guess, is impoundment date for that. And reuse of water. We were dumping, I think, at one point, 25 million gallons of affluent water a day, sewer water, on the gray farms out in East Lubbock, out around Buffalo Lake. But we went to a system where we started treating that to stream quality, and then we were dumping like 10 million gallons of water down, and still are, and probably more than that today, into the stream, into the Brazos. So with Lake 7 and the way we can reuse that water, Lubbock is in really good shape because of the work that's been done over the last 25 years. I don't know. I mean, my guess is a new pressurized Crimois line, and Lubbock's got water for the next 300 plus years. But Bo Brown and Mike Liner led that and did a really, really good job. We had to get creative on how we financed some of that, but did a really good job.
Let's talk about community growth. I've lived here all my life, and I drive out in Southwest Lubbock, and I don't even know where I am anymore.
I'm with you.
And you talk about when you
go out West Lubbock now.
Right. I mean, you talk about you serving on the council in the early 2000s, and we have yet to crack 200,000. And I don't know where we are today, over 300.
Over 300. I think it's 319.
Okay. That's almost, that's a 30% increase or a 33% increase in 25 years. How's that happen? Or what's driving it?
Well, we've got obviously Texas Tech and the growth that Tech's had. I mean, Tech's gone from 24,000 in 99 when I think is about the right number when we started Overton. They're over 40,000 today. They want to get to 50. My guess is they won't stop at 50. We've got great medical here. We've got great manufacturing. It's just Lubbock's a great place to be. We don't call it the hub city for no reason. I mean, it's the hub of this area. And we talk about, and I can't remember if the 320 population number is countywide or Lubbock, but it's pretty close. I mean, Lubbock's almost the whole county now anyway. But when you look at what we service on a daily basis, I bet it's over 1 million people because we get all of eastern New Mexico. I mean, from Amarillo to Midland to Abilene to eastern New Mexico, they all come here to go to eat dinner or go to the mall to shop.
Or go to the doctor.
Or
the football game or the basketball
game.
So,
that's the one thing I know you deal with this in your business as well. But a lot of these big retailers or restaurant groups, I know when we were trying to get the one that's in the mall parking lot today years ago, that they just look at your population, you're not big enough. But if we can get people to Lubbock, if we can just get them to get on a plane, come spend 3 hours driving around, we can sell them on Lubbock because our demographics are there. It's just not, they don't all live right here, but we're servicing it. And we've had that with numerous retailers and restaurants. But if we can get them here, we can sell them. And John Osborne and Lita's had great luck with, if we can get them here, we can sell them on the work ethic, the people, and we've got the folks to create the jobs.
What advice do you offer to somebody who's considering running for council or mayor today?
Get help, psychological help. I'm joking. We talked earlier when I first went on the council, I didn't feel like that was a full-time job. I think it is today. I can tell you mayor is more than a full-time job today. But the one thing that you have to do, and was true when I was there, and I think it's still true today, you've got to have a sounding board. You have to have 2 or 3 people or 4 that you trust, that you can take whatever issue it is and bounce it off of them. I had that with your dad. Obviously, I used my dad a little bit. I got accused of having a conflict of interest every time I turned the corner, so I didn't go to him as much. But Mike Liner and John Wilkerson, Alan White, folks like that. George McMahon's another one that I went to. But I think you've got to have 3 or 4. You're not always going to agree. You may not always vote the way they tell you to vote, but you need to have those folks that have been successful that you can bounce stuff off of. And if you're not willing to do that, I don't know how you do that job. Yeah. It pays $75 a month. I mean, it's not like you can go in there and go hire the folks that you as mayor want to surround yourself with like we do at work. So you've got to have, in my opinion, you've got to have some brain power that you can go to that has been there back in that time frame. There was some stuff a lot of stuff I talked to H.A. Sessions about, Henry Hunnicky, but the main ones were John, Mike Liner, and Alan White. Matter of fact, Alan is the one that helped me get the meeting with Boone Pickens to start the water conversation up in Roberts County.
Good advice. Mark, let's shift from politics to, let's talk Overton.
Okay.
We can't do it justice in 10 minutes, but talked a little bit in the previous episode about how your dad first invested in North Overton. Describe his vision for that and how that project formed and what started it.
So by the mid-90s, I mean, obviously Dad was still CEO and running things, but he had the companies running pretty good, and we had great people. People don't believe it when I say this, but for a couple of years, we didn't know what Dad was doing. He was in his office with his door shut. He had hired a guy that none of us knew exactly what he was doing either, but he was working directly for Dad, the only employee Dad had at the time. And I'll never forget, in about May of 1999, May or June, Dad called a family meeting and said, I know where all the bodies are buried. I know there's 1,000 properties in North Overton. I've got contact information for every one of them. 92% of them are absentee. They don't live here. And I'm tired of waiting on the city or tech to do something. We're going to buy Overton. I thought he was crazy. I mean, nuts. But that's kind of how that started. And instead of going in like you normally do as a developer and quietly start buying stuff up, he holds a press conference about a month later in the old Red Raider Club parking lot and announces the project. We didn't ring a phone, knock on a door for about 4 years because our phone was ringing with sellers. Now, there was a lot of properties down there that didn't do that. So we spent 99 to about 05 maybe buying properties, and then still a few here and there after that.
For our listeners, let's do the geography here. We're talking about basically 1 square mile, 4th Street to Broadway, Q to University.
Right. What would now be Marcia Sharp to Main Street. We didn't go all the way to Broadway.
Okay.
And then University to Avenue Q. It's 326 acres. So just.
How many separate parcels?
There was about 1,000. Now, some of those were multiple owners. J.T. Talkington had probably 30. Mac Davis's dad had 20. I mean, there were several that had multiple owners, but yeah, you had close to 700 individuals to deal with.
Plus, you had to go buy some apartments back you'd already sold.
We bought probably about 700 units that we'd sold over the last 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
How long did that take?
Well, we finished that project. When I say finished it, I still have one piece of land right off Avenue Q that we're sitting on to build another apartment on at some point. Everything else we've sold. It took 18 years. Now, we were out of the woods, if you will, by 2007 or 8, about the time the financial crisis hit. You had all the student housing. So originally, we were going to go from university 2 blocks in with student housing, then single family the rest of the way. Well, you can go see how that worked out. It's all student housing down there. There's one block about the middle that is the one thing that I would change, but we had already started the single family, but we ended up with apartments on north and south end of that block. Then Walmart came in and bought the 22 acres where they're at today. But we paid that note off sometime in 17, I think. I'm trying to think. Other than one piece of property we own a couple of the condos that we built. We built about 100 condos down there. I've got 2 of them still. But other than that, we don't have anything in Overton. Been out for almost 10 years now. But it was about a 20-year project.
Talk about the differential in tax base between when you started and where it is today.
Well, so interesting. When we started, everything in that 326 acres was on LCAD, Lubbock County Appraisal District, at about $8 million. I told you Dad held a press conference, and the next year that number jumped to 26 million. So we used that as a base number, the 26. I haven't looked in the last couple of years, but it's over 900 million in tax base now. The big winner in that is our school district, LISD. As you know, they're kind of landlocked and can't grow, and that has had to be a real big boost for our school district. There was a PID and a TIF put in place down there. The TIF is tax increment financing. So the city, the county, they still get taxes based on the 26 million, but that will sunset in about a year or 2. And when that sunsets, then the city and county will benefit from that as well. But all that money was used for infrastructure and new streets and to make that development happen. Because everything down there was 100 years old. There was no way you could build a hotel and have sewer capacity or water capacity.
Yeah. What's your favorite parcel acquisition story?
Well, I've got a really good one. So we had already purchased, we actually owned the Windjammer Apartments on 7th Street. American State Bank had the loan on it, and we were demoing property. And you know Clay Leverton. Clay calls me one day in a dead panic, and he said, Mark, I've got to meet with you. I'm in Overton, and my collateral's gone. So where are you? He said, I'm at what used to be the Windjammer. I said, I'm about 3 blocks. I'll be right over there. So I'll pull up there, and Clay's, he's sweating. And we've knocked it down. It's just, and he said, my collateral's gone. I said, no, Clay, your collateral's still there. Do you want me to leave it here? We had planned on moving it, cleaning the lot up, but I'll leave your collateral if you'd like. He says, you can't do that. And now there's one other one, and this is a pretty good story. We were at church on a Sunday morning. I get a phone call, and the guy thinks he has Delbert on the phone. And Mr. McDougal, this is so-and-so, and I've been out of town for a month, and I just got back home, and my house is gone. I said, oh, where's your house? Well, he gives me an address. Well, I knew it was Overton. I'm like, uh-oh. So Dad was I think at the time he was in a preschool or a elementary age classroom. And so I went and got him, and he's like, I can't leave right now. I said, yeah, we got to go. So we go down there, we meet the guy. His house is gone. His furniture, everything in it. Well, the contractor had got the right address, but the wrong street, and tore down the wrong house. And so Dad looked at him and said, well, how much you want for it? And the guy said $50,000. And this is on a Sunday, 11 o'clock maybe. You be at the title company in the morning at 10 a.m., and we will close, and then we'll have a cashier's check for you. Well, the title company's like, we can't close that quick. Dad's like, we ain't got a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy could have,
yeah.
I don't know what number he could have thrown out,
right.
But it wasn't 50.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably one of the best stories. There's, we closed properties down there. There was one property, Mont McClendon, Bob Brandt, somebody could recall this story, but I think out of that one single family house, they had to get 12 signatures out of 7 or 8 states, including 5 prisons in different states, for heirs to sign off on that closing, and you're thinking you never, but it happened. It took a while, but we ended up getting them all.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, for the most part, it went pretty smooth, but there were a few of those interesting stories that happened out there.
How many apartments there now? How many hotels? What describe generally the mix?
I should probably know how many hotel rooms there are, but you've got the Overton, then there's a limited use hotel across the street. There's a Holiday Inn that you and I actually were involved in later on. And then there is roughly about 9,000 student housing beds in Overton. I think that's about right, about 8,800 to 9,000 student housing beds, and then probably 400 hotel rooms.
It was at the time the largest private redevelopment in the country.
Yeah. So Dad had found a place in North Carolina that had done what they called a major renovation, similar to what we were doing. The day before we left, we canceled the trip because we found out it was 5 acres. But yeah, it was called the largest privately funded redevelopment project in America at the time. I don't know if that's still true or not, but it was a large undertaking.
It was.
It was all in poker on Dad's side. I can tell you that. He mortgaged everything we had, hoping he was right. And like I said earlier, we all thought he was nuts, and I still think he was, but it worked.
Worked out okay. Mark, thanks for taking time to share your story with us this morning. We're going to ask you to come back for one more episode next week and talk about some of what you're working on now, a little downtown redevelopment, and where your company's headed, and your vision for the future of our community. I want to thank you for listening today. Please join us again next week for another episode of Archive West Texas.